United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alright, today's objectives are going to be to write and use ratios, rates, and unit rates, and to write and solve proportions. This is going to be 2-7. A ratio is a comparison of two quantities written both of these ways, either A with A, one and then B, or A over B. We usually see it as A over B, where B cannot be 0.
You need to write both of these definitions down.
A statement that two ratios are equivalent, such as 1 over 12 equals 2 over 24, is called a proportion. It says, read the proportion 1 over 15 equals x over 450 as 1 is to 15 as x is to 450.
Do you want them to write? What do you want them to write down there?
Just these two.
Just write down these two terms right here. You can pause the video if you need to before you move forward.
Number 1, the ratio of games won to games lost for a baseball team is 3-2. The team won 18 games. How many games did the team lose? So they won 18. We need to figure out how many it is that they lost using the proportion
What do you want them to write down?
that they gave us. Go ahead and take a minute and write down the problem.
Okay.
All right, first of all, we need to actually create the proportion using the ratio that they gave us. So we're going to create the ratio, again, using the fraction symbol. And we're going to put games won on the top and games lost on the bottom.
And it's really important that you create that fraction and that you put those words in there so you keep everything in this problem in the right order.
Because everything pertaining to games that they won is going to go on the top. Everything pertaining to games that they lost is going to go on the bottom. And it's 3-2. So for every 3 games they won, they lost 2 games. And we're going to set that equal to 18 over n. And this is because games that they won is 3/2, and they won 18 games. Again, everything talking about them winning is on the top, and everything talking about them losing is on the bottom. And we want to find out how many games they lost, so we're putting in a variable right there. So we're going to put in n to represent the number of games that the team lost. Again, make sure you have this written down. This is still the same problem. We're just going to go through and actually solve it. We're going to solve this by cross multiplying. So we're going to say 3 times n and 2 times 18. We're going to set this up to look like this. 3 parentheses n equals 2 parentheses 18. Now with the 2 and the 18, it doesn't matter which one is in the parentheses and which one is not. But over here with the n, anytime you have a variable or a letter, you need to make sure that that is what is inside your parentheses. So we're going to go ahead and multiply. 3 times n is 3n, and 2 times 18 is 36. Then we're going to move the 3 and leave the n, so we're going to divide both sides by 3. And n equals 12 games. So if they lost, or if they won 18 games, it means they lost 12 games. So you need to write over here in a sentence. So to answer the question, we answer the question in a complete sentence. The team lost 12 games. That is the actual answer to this problem. Take a minute, make sure you have all of it copied before you move on.
All right, the next thing we're going to look at is a scale. You're going to need to write these terms down. A scale is a ratio between two sets of measurements, such as 1 inch is to 5 miles. A scale drawing or scale model uses a scale to represent an object as smaller or larger than the actual object. A map is an example of a scale drawing. Sometimes you'll see maybe an architectural sketch and it might say drawn to scale or not drawn to scale. Scale drawings and scale models are real-life uses for proportion. Go ahead and just write down that a scale is a ratio between two sets of measurements, such as 1 inch to 5 miles. Write that one down. I'm good with them not writing that one. You good with that?
Yep.
Okay. Before we move forward, you don't have to write the rest of the text on the slide. All right, so let's look at an example of this. It says a contractor has a blueprint for a house drawn to a scale of 1 inch to 3 feet. A wall on the blueprint is 6.5 inches long. How long is the actual wall? Let's break this one down just like we did the previous one. We're going to write our proportion. First, we have, again, in words, we have the blueprint 1 inch is to actual 3, is in the blueprint, 1 inch represents 1 actual foot. So put blueprint inches over actual feet there with the fraction bar in the middle. And then we're going to set it up on the blueprint. We have 1 inch. On the actual, in real life, we have 3 feet. That's the beginning. Now, the wall on the blueprint, so we're still on the top of the fractioner because we're still dealing with the blueprint, is 6.5 inches long. The question is, how long is the actual wall? So anytime we have a question mark in algebra, we put in a variable because we don't know the value of that number. So we're going to put in a variable and find the value. So x is our actual length. Use the cross products property to solve. We're going to multiply 1 times x and 3 times 6.5. 3 times 6.5 is going to give us 19.5 feet. So the answer there is that the actual length of the wall is 19.5 feet, 19 and a half feet. Sorry. Make sure that you have that down before you move forward.
All right, now we're going to look at just solving some proportions. Tomorrow in class we'll look at a few more real-life examples of this. But for now we just want you to get to where you can actually solve the proportion. So here we're going to cross multiply or use cross products. And we're going to set this up as 6 times 7 equals 2 parentheses y minus 3. Now it does not matter whether your 2 and your y minus 3 are on the left or whether it's on the right. It doesn't matter if your 6 times 7 is on the left or if it's on the right. It does not matter. And it doesn't matter here whether or not your 6 or your 7 is in parentheses. However, it does matter over here because, again, anytime you have a variable or a letter, the part with the variable or letter needs to be inside the parentheses. And this will just get you set up so that you know how to solve, because if you don't set it up this way, it looks funny and you're not going to know how to finish solving it. So here we just have an equation that we need to finish solving. So we're going to distribute first because we have parentheses. And we're going to say 6 times 7 is 42, and then we're going to say 2 times y is 2y, and 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. So now we want to get this y by itself, so we're going to move everything around it. So we're going to add 6 to both sides. We're going to say 48 equals 2y, and then we need to move the y. The y and the 2 are touching, or we need to move the 2. The 2 and the y are touching. It means they're multiplying, so we're going to divide both sides by 2 to get rid of the 2 and leave the y. 48 divided by 2 is 24, so y equals 24. Make sure you take a minute and get all of this work copied down. You do not have to write the words in blue. We are going to go through and check this. We're going to go back to our original proportion, and instead of y, we're going to put in 24. And we're going to say 24 minus 3 is 21. And then there's a couple of different ways that you can actually check this. You can either put 6 over 21 in the fraction button in your calculator and hit enter and see if it reduces to 2 over 7. Or you can just cross multiply again. 6 times 7 is 42 and 21 times 2 is 42. So 42 equals 42. Take a minute, make sure you have the check written down.
Okay, we're going to look at number 4 on paper, so go ahead and get this copied down. You have g plus 3 over 5 is equal to 7 over 4. We're going to look at our cross products, and we're going to write our 4 times the g plus 3. You always want to put the variable in your parentheses here. So always make sure that whatever's with the variable goes inside the parentheses here. So that's why I changed up the order of that, and I put 4 times g plus 3. It's the same thing as writing it any other way. And then we're going to put our equal sign here, and then our 7 times 5 over here. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is distribute our 4 to everything inside the parentheses. So draw your arrows and make sure that you distribute your 4, which gives us 4g plus 12 equals, and over here 7 times 5 is going to give us 35. So now we're going to move everything away from our 4g, so we're going to subtract 12 on both sides. And this is going to give us 4g equals 23. That cancels. Now we have to get our 4 away from our g, so we're going to divide both sides by 4, which is going to give us g, because that cancels, equals 5.75. So now we're going to go back to the original problem and we're going to check. We're going to plug in our g equals 5.75 everywhere we see a g. Take the original problem and we're going to plug that in. So we have 5.75 plus 3 over 5 equals 7 over 4. 5.75 plus 3 is going to give us 8.75. And then again, we're still over 5 here. Equals 7 over 4. And when I type this into my calculator, well, I'm sorry, we're going to cross multiply. My fault. And when we multiply 8.75 times 4, that's going to give us 35. And 5 times 7 is going to give us 35. So that checks out and validates the fact that g is in fact equal to 5.75.
All right, let's go ahead and look at number 5. Go ahead and get this written down before you move on. It's 4n over 2 equals 5 over negative 1. That's our proportion. We're going to go ahead and cross multiply. We're going to say negative 1 times 4n equals 2 times 5. Again, make sure that you write it this way with the 4n inside the parentheses. Again, anytime you have a variable, it needs to be the one on the inside of the parentheses. The 2 and the 5, it doesn't really matter whether the 5's on the inside of the parentheses or the 2 is. So here we're going to go ahead and multiply negative 1 times 4n is negative 4n, and 2 times 5 is 10. So negative 4n equals 10. We're going to divide both sides by negative 4. And n equals negative 2.5. We're going to go ahead and check this. We're going to go back to our original proportion, and instead of n, we put in negative 2.5. 4 times negative 2.5 is negative 10. So again, two different ways. You could plug the negative 10 over 2 into your fraction button in your calculator and hit enter, and then put in 5 over negative 1 and hit enter and see if they're the same. Or you could cross multiply again. Negative 10 times negative 1 is 10, and 2 times 5 is 10. So this checks out, and our answer is n equals negative 2.5. Make sure you have the work and the check written down before you move on.
All right, let's take a look at number 6 on paper. Go ahead and get this problem down. It is negative 3 over 8 equals 5a over 2. We're going to cross multiply, and we're going to have negative 3 times 2 equals 8 times 5a. And again, our variable is going to be inside our parentheses here. When we multiply this out, we get negative 3 times 2, which gives us negative 6, and 8 times 5a gives us 40a. We're going to divide both sides by 40, to get our a by itself. And negative 6 divided by 40, I'm going to do in my calculator, obviously, because it's going to come out to be a decimal, and it's going to give me negative 0.15, negative 0.15, and then I have an a over here. So a equals negative 0.15. So let's go back to our original problem and check that. Negative 3 over 8, and then I had 5 times a, which is now negative 0.15 over 2. Now let's look at checking this a little different way here. I think this is a more logical way to check, and we certainly do not discourage you from doing this. Like Ms. Singh has been saying, you can type it in your fraction bar, but we also know that a fraction bar is just another way of saying divide. So let's look at this if we were to divide it out. Let's say negative 3 divided by 8 and hit enter. That's going to give us negative 0.375. Let's bring down our equal sign. And let's do the same thing on the other side. Let's say 5, open parentheses, negative 0.15, close parentheses, and we can go ahead and divide that by 2. And that gives me negative 0.375. So it checks out. You can also do the cross multiplication thing if you need it to come out to be nice, pretty little numbers. If you do that, it should have come out to be negative 6 equals negative 6. Make sure you have that work and the check written down before you move on.
I think I'm right.
All right, you're good.
All right, go ahead and write down number 7. It's negative 4 over x plus 2 equals negative 5 over x minus 3. That's our proportion. To solve, again, we're going to cross multiply just like we have been doing, or use cross products. Again, when you set this up, make sure that the x plus 2 is what's in your parentheses, and make sure that the x minus 3 is also what is in the parentheses, because those are where your variables are at. So negative 4, parentheses x minus 3 equals negative 5, parentheses x plus 2. Again, the x minus 3 and the x plus 2 need to be what's in parentheses for this to look right. We're going to distribute. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x, and negative 4 times negative 3 is going to turn into a positive 12, but right now we have it written as minus a negative. And then we're going to say negative 5 times x and negative 5 times 2. So negative 5 times x is negative 5x, and negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. Again, we're going to change those two negatives to a positive here and say plus 12. This time it's a little bit more complicated to work out because we have x's on both sides, but it's not anything that we haven't already been doing in Chapter 2. So we're going to go ahead and add the 5x to both sides and get 1x plus 12 equals negative 10. We're going to subtract 12 and get x equals negative 22. So go ahead and make sure that you have all of this copied, and we are going to check it. Here's our check for this one. We put in negative 4 over 22 plus, or negative 22 plus 2 equals negative 5 over negative 22 minus 3. And we go ahead and say negative 22 plus 2 is negative 20, and negative 22 minus 3 is negative 25. And when I cross multiply those, I get 100 equals 100. Again, make sure, take a minute, make sure you have the work and the check written before you move on. Right, now we have both of those objectives. Again, tomorrow in class we're going to look at a few more of the real world type problems that go along with ratios and proportions. Take a minute. You don't have to do all three of these problems because we've not been over ones that are like number 1 and number 2. But go ahead and see if you can work number 3. Okay, so go ahead and try number 3 on the before you go on your own. Take a minute, pause the video. When you're ready, go ahead and play the video again.
I don't think the answers are on there. Yep. Okay, so this is what you should have gotten. You cross multiplied your 3 over 8 and your 6 over x minus 4, and make sure that you put your x minus 4 in parentheses. Make sure that you drew your arrows to distribute. It should have given you 3x minus 12 equals 48. added 12 on both sides, which gave me 3x equals 60. Divide both sides by 3, which gave me x equals 20. And then your check over here. It's probably going to be best case scenario after we talked about it. When you plug into your check, if you're going to type it into your calculator, at least go ahead and make sure that you work the operations that are here and get it down to the 2 basic fractions. So I've gone ahead and done that. I went ahead and subtracted the 4 from 20, which gave us 16 here. So I just copied the rest of the problem down, 3 over 8, 6 over 16. And when I typed that into my calculator, it gave me 0.375. Thank you for watching. That's the end of your video.